Greetings, everyone. Sam Washington here with MPSPG, and we're going to talk about blockchain and try to understand just really quickly, as much as possible, what blockchain is about and what its value is in the business world. So what we had is once upon a time, everyone bartered. And that means basically trading goods and services for other goods and services. Small towns and villages where there was no money or no gold or no silver would basically trade their farming goods, their sheep, their cattle, their grain, and those kinds of things for essentially the wood and other things that other people would have to sell. Other farmers, other woodcutters and fur traders and those kinds of things. Everyone traded for goods and services. And the great point about this is that everything was real time. You could see the fur traders coming in. You could see the farming in the wheat. You'd know when it was harvest time. You know when it was time to cure bacon or kill a cow and cut up the beef. Those kinds of things. You would know when all of those things occurred because it was a real time world. And so that eventually changed just a bit. It became a different world in that banks and financial organizations began to build into some of these villages and move in and turn them sort of into operating small towns. And so with the income generating structure of banks, in which they provided money and gold and silver, people began to be able to build wealth rather than just build up stores of grain and food and extras of things they really did not need. You could buy what you needed for a short time, and you could, if you didn't have to store everything up for long amounts of time because people no longer traded goods and services for goods and services. With banks, people were able to build wealth and save in those kinds of things and actually start real businesses. So you had blacksmith shops and gun stores and hotels and all kinds of business, dressmakers and doctors and even herbalists who were able to, take their goods or provide their services and take the results of that to the bank and trade those for money and get things built and done. Again, you could see all of this activity real time, so that if you owned a blacksmith shop, you knew when people were going to be coming to visit you, if they brought in horses, or as the horses were being brought in, or as their equipment broke, those kinds of things. If you were someone who is looking for a loan, you knew when the bank was going to get money, and so, or when the bank would have a big inflow of cash from an event or from a mining success, those kinds of things. Everyone could see that real time. That was really important. And so part of that growth is that the towns got bigger and the organizations that ran them got bigger. And, sooner or later, organizations get so big, they kind of run out of their local customer base. They begin to need to look for new customers. And so as a lot of big companies, self-contained business operations began to expand, we began to have that problem. So you had operations like Kaiser, Global Shipping, that had its own hospital, had its own employees, had its own doctors and factories, had employee housing. It had also owned the production of farms and things like that in the region as it got bigger, and eventually it ran out of its customer base. And so companies then have to expand and look for other opportunities. Again, I do want to make sure to be clear that this operation is also pretty real time. Everyone in the community could see how the factory or the sawmill or sugar mill was doing, and so they could plan their lives accordingly. And plan their purchasing and their buying and their building. All of those things were real time. But as companies and organizations doing business spread out into the world, this happened. So we began to see that companies began to stretch their lines of construction and business construction and engagement and access to customers. So they would either finance themselves if they had a big financial stake or a big financial asset background or holdings, and they could build additional operations elsewhere to get more access to customers. Of course, this resulted in longer supply lines, in less real-time visibility in terms of the means of production, with your banking operation in DC, your finance operation in New York, your IT support operation in California, Oregon, your R&D operations in the Dakotas and New Mexico, your customer support operation operating out of Florida, your construction team, it just all kinds of visions everywhere. And it began to be a problem to begin to establish and maintain a real-time view of the delivery of products and goods and services, not just to customers, but to you yourself, in order to build more products and goods and services. And so, but it wasn't all that bad, as long as you were in some place like the United States, where travel was contiguous. We had freeways and highways and roadways and trains and those kinds of things. It was fairly easy. But then something happened. We all discovered the global commercial market. And so then that began to provide opportunities to work with more customers in more countries and more places. Of course, the result of that was less and less certainty about delivery of goods and services, about delivery of the means of producing your product and delivering your product. It became, you were having to tell your customer, well, I sent it last week, but it might not be there for a month or more. And those kinds of conversations are still happening now with some corporations who are operating in a global marketplace. The bad news is that you now have to have a marketing team in Japan, because your American marketing team doesn't speak Japanese. You now have to have an entire factory operation to deliver to Southeast Asia, and that has to be based in Australia, requiring that you meet all kinds of laws and rules, and there are all kinds of additional business risk and uncertainties. You now have to deal with banking operations in Europe, who have all kinds of new different policies and long lead times that you have to adjust to. So this is the world of the global commercial entity. You have to have long lead times and plan long lead times, and still you have trouble guaranteeing delivery of a good or a service or a solution in a timely manner to customers, because you don't have that level of guarantee. So enter blockchain. Blockchain is the technology process by which a group of companies and businesses connect into their own closed, restricted intranet partnership environment. It's an intranet environment in which everyone in this agreed upon internet partnership trust each other. They trust each other to be able to look into each other's operations and activities and processes to see where they are in terms of their schedules, in terms of their development, their deliverables, their planning, their processes, so that everyone in the partnership can plan for the successful development, delivery, rollout, and presenting or sale of a customer, of a solution, a product, or a service. And so that means that everyone's sharing with each other. So in this closed loop organization, there's a bank. In this closed loop organization, there's an insurer. In this closed loop organization, there's a mining company. If we're dealing with natural resources, a mining company, a foresting and wood delivery company. If we're dealing with cattle and animals, sort of for furs or for meat or milk, they're in the club. If you have a marketing team, everyone can see into everyone else's operation and see what the bank's financial schedule is for providing the manufacturer with funds to hire staff, so that the human resources company knows when to begin training staff to go to work at the manufacturing and the production firms. The marketing firm knows when the production people are about to have the product ready to roll out. So they're able to plan a schedule to present to potential customers and to introduce it to the public through advertising. The actual sales team knows when the product is going to arrive, or the solution is going to arrive, or the service is going to be available, so they can begin planning to sell to the customers and get salespeople on track. It's an end-to-end process where everybody is able to see what's next and begin to be have predictability and the planning capability for the whole life cycle of a product from its beginning to its end, from concept to design to development to financing to staffing to production to packaging to marketing, sales to end-to-end customer delivery and customer support. Everyone in that closed club, that closed internet communication environment, trust each other to be able to see and to be able to allow them to plan for next steps to be profitable and to grow. And so every step is tracked real time live. That's what blockchain does for the organization. So what blockchain becomes is this. Blockchain is the same as the early days of commerce, where everyone is able to see their horseshoes being made, the horses being chased down, the guys at the funeral parlor now working on building that wagon, the guys with the leather shop building the reins and the constraints for the horses and for the rig itself. Everyone's able to see it. The people at the hotel can plan for staff and plan room availability and on and on and on for the whole community to be able to work as one operating business entity as many small towns do today. Thanks for listening. Hope you understand blockchain better. I'm Sam Washington. I'm advisory principal for MPSPG. I'm also vice president of the Silicon Valley Black Chamber of Commerce. Please contact us. Sam Washington again, and thanks for listening and sharing with me.